Hey everyone, it's Matt, and today I've got a big old pile of video games I'm going to be talking about. Well, not just physical ones, but some digital ones too, because I am going to be talking about all of the video games that I played in the last couple months of 2021. That is everything I've played since the last video game ramble video I did. And I played quite a few games in a short time, or at least started some. This includes every game I started and played more than just a few minutes of. So, yeah. How about we get into it right now? So, the first game has a protagonist that many people have compared me to in terms of how I look. And you'll know what I mean when I put up the box art. It is Hitman 3. As you can imagine, third game in the current Hitman series, the sort of reboot series that started a few years ago. And this is a pretty good game. In most ways, it's pretty similar to the first two Hitmen in this trilogy. You basically are assigned a target or various targets in a fancy, interesting location, and you have to find a way to kill them in the most inconspicuous, or if you're feeling daring, very conspicuous way possible without getting caught. And there's not really too much to say about this game. If you're familiar with the first two, it's pretty much just more of the same, but there are some interesting twists to some of the levels that I found interesting. I'm saying interesting too much, aren't I? But you get the idea. It's just kind of a sandbox game where you have a small little open world in each level, and you get to play around with different tools and options and interactions to try and make the assassination go as smoothly or roughly as you want. And it's fun. It's decently challenging at times, but I'd say this is probably my favorite of the recent Hitman games. The first two kind of feel samey to me, but a few of the missions in this have some pretty fun twists to the setting and the methods by which you can try to assassinate people. But overall, it's very much a game where what you see is what you get. It's more Hitman, and if you like Hitman, you'll probably like this one. So, pretty good game. So, next I played Jazzpunk Director's Cut. And Jazzpunk is a pretty simple little game. It's a fairly short, I guess you'd call it a sort of comedy adventure, where you go from location to location and complete various simple tasks like finding a certain number of items or solving very simple puzzles and triggering random events. But it's all done with a very kind of tongue-in-cheek spy movie type, like a parody of a spy movie to some degree type of thing. And it's really, at the end of the day, less of a game and more of a clever joke delivery vehicle, where it funnels you from one silly situation to the next. And if that sounds like your kind of thing, I think you would probably have fun with it. I'm not sure I would pay full price for it, and I did not. I got it on sale for about $4, and I'd say it was a good deal at that price. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about this game because it is pretty short and simple, but it's one of those games where the novelty is in the writing and the silliness of it. And once that starts to wear off, it gets maybe a little dry and repetitive, but it's not really a big deal with this one. It's a pretty good game overall. And again, if that sounds like everything, I would recommend it. Just don't expect a masterpiece or anything. It's a fun time, and that's all. And next, I played a game that's had quite a bit of discussion in recent months since it came out, with many journalists and critics calling it Game of the Year. And that is Deathloop. And I liked Deathloop a lot. I think it's a very good game. Do I think it is the best game of last year? No, I think the best game of last year was Returnal, for sure. But this was a solid 8 out of 10 for me. It's a game with many interesting ideas and a cool concept, and I think the execution of all that is mixed, but mostly good. There are some things that frustrated me about it, and some things that kind of bored me, but for the most part, I had a good time. If you're not familiar with Deathloop, it is a game where you are stuck on an island where every day the day resets at midnight and everyone lives out the same day again. And if you die, you restart at the beginning of the day. And your goal is to escape the time loop by managing to kill, I think it's 8, maybe 9, I think it's 8. I guess they're called visionaries, basically important people in a single day before the loop resets or before you die. But this is a task that is easier said than done, because they are all in very different places and surrounded by many people who are very quick to try and kill you if you get anywhere close to them. And so it's a game about repeating the time loop and trying different things to discover information about the people and their schedules, and basically setting up a master plan, which at the end of the game you can then execute by killing them all in one day after setting up all the pieces to fall into place. And what that means for the gameplay is you basically choose one of 4 areas to explore and a time of day, because at different times of day they differ in their layout and what's happening in them. And you just explore the area, try and trigger various events and so on, and add to your intel. And this game, due to its nature, is a little repetitive at times. Sometimes it has you doing the same thing over and over again without feeling like it's very different. It does get a little tedious at times because of that. And the difficulty I found to be interesting. At certain points, particularly in the first half of my playtime with this game, I found it felt very unbalanced, where I was either having a good time or feeling completely overwhelmed, and part of that was due to the online invasion system, which is a bit like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where online players can invade your game as an enemy NPC, and they will try and kill you. And occasionally that would happen, and I would get basically sniped, one shot, from very far away, with no warning, no sound, nothing. I couldn't see them, I couldn't hear them, I was just suddenly dead through no fault of my own. And when you die in this game, you sometimes will lose up to 30 to 45 minutes of progress and all the stuff you found during that time. So when that happens, it's very, very frustrating if it doesn't feel like it's your fault. Thankfully, that kind of thing was rare, and most of the time the game felt pretty fair, but I did occasionally have frustrating moments of difficulty like that. But after a certain point, the game eventually becomes, in my opinion, overly easy. And at that point, it becomes kind of tedious and repetitive as you're completing tasks that feel like they have no challenge to them. And so, like I said, it's a game that is conceptually very cool, and it's very stylish, and I like the art style, and the voice acting is great and all that. But actually playing it is a bit of a mixed bag. Would I recommend it? I'd recommend you give it a try. Yes, I liked it a lot, but it's definitely not without its flaws. Overall, though, I do applaud it for trying something different, even if it's not always successful with the things it tries. And next, I played Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. And this, if you're not familiar with it, is a sort of remake of the first two Super Monkey Ball games. And I believe it also has content from Super Monkey Ball Adventure, though I'm not too familiar with that one because I never played the original. But I did play the first two games when I was much younger on GameCube. And I had forgotten how difficult the Super Monkey Ball games are. This is a hard game at times, and can occasionally get very frustrating. But unlike the original releases, it does have some basically, I guess you call them accessibility options, where you can turn on slow motion and occasionally skip levels if you want and so on. So it's a little less punishing than those originals, but very much at the end of the day, the game is very hard, but also very fun. It's got that arcade feeling of just one more try every time you die. And the levels are short enough and load quickly enough that retrying over and over again isn't really much of a time sink. But if you've heard me talking about all this and you're wondering, Matt, but what is Super Monkey Ball? If you're not familiar with it, it is a game where you have a monkey and a ball, as the title might imply, and you are in control of a level. You basically control the tilt of the entire level as you try and guide the monkey ball to a goal. And it just gets increasingly more complex as you go along, with more precision required and so on. And that's really it. There's a bunch of mini games and other things in this, but the main game is what I described. Some people were complaining about this remake, that the physics were different and that you're less precise with your movements. I have not played the original games recently enough to really be the judge of that, but it does feel maybe a little wishy-washy at times, where it could feel a little more responsive when you flick the stick, so that may be true. Just something to keep in mind if you are a fan of the originals and are wondering about this one. But if you like a challenging, fun arcade game, simple but challenging, I would recommend Super Monkey Ball. And Banana Mania, as long as you're not super nitpicky about perfect physics, I'd say it is a pretty good way to play the Super Monkey Ball games, so I had a good time. Next, I played a game called GRIS, or maybe it's pronounced GRIS or something else, I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever heard the title of this game pronounced out loud, but that's beside the point. GRIS is a very pretty game. It is a sort of narrative-focused, side-scrolling, minimalistic platformer is what I call it. Maybe narrative-focused is saying too much. It doesn't really, I don't think it has any text. It's all just kind of visual storytelling. There's some very pretty art as you make your way through various locations and solve very simple platforming puzzles. If you're looking for a very challenging, engaging, high-octane game, game, this is not it. But if you're looking for a sort of soothing, I guess I could call it ethereal type of experience, where you're just going to take in the vibe, this is very much that type of game. And I will say I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. It was a game that I felt was very pretty, but once the novelty of the prettiness starts to wear off, it just feels kind of bland, in my opinion. Much of it is just walking from point A to point B while you look at art as the levels transform around you. And if you're in the mood for that, it is very cool. I guess I just wasn't quite in the mood for that so much, so I did feel a little bored at times. But if that's what you're looking for, I would recommend it. It is well made, and it is very pretty from an art standpoint and cool to look at. Just don't expect something crazy and action-packed, and I think you can have a good time if it's what you're looking for. Pretty good overall, just not exactly what I was in the mood for at the time. And next, I played a game that I talked quite a bit about in a recent video, so you might know what this is already, but it was Doki Literature Club Plus. And if you're not familiar with this game, you might be looking at this and thinking, Matt, are you admitting to playing an anime dating simulator on the internet? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for some people, it might be a sort of a private thing that they want to keep to themselves instead of showing to almost 200,000 subscribers and all that. But, well, the answer to that question is, while this looks like a cutesy anime dating simulator, that is really only the facade of this game. And that's all I can say without spoiling it. It, in reality, is a very different genre of game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I got the Platinum Trophy. Not that it was very hard, but I went through everything this game has to offer, and I had a great time doing it. It is an interesting subversion of your expectations, and it takes various tropes that you might be familiar with and turns them on their head in very fun and thrilling ways. I will say though, this game is not for the faint of heart. If you are struggling with mental health, I would not recommend it. And yeah, it's not for kids, and it's not for those who are easily disturbed. But if you want something that's a bit of a twist on what you expect, and you can handle that kind of thing, I would highly recommend Doki Literature Club. The original version, I believe, is free on Steam if you want to play that, but this is the updated version with HD art assets and extra content and so on. So if you're a fan of the original and want more, that's what this is for. Very good game in my opinion. And next up, I played Mass Effect. The first game in the Mass Effect trilogy. Now this box right here is the Legendary Edition, which includes the whole trilogy. I've only played some of the first so far. This is a game that I have wanted to play for many years. I've heard great things about the trilogy overall, even if there's been some controversy with some parts of it over time. But I never got around to it for some reason. And I'm only a few hours into it, but I will say I have things I like and things I don't like about it. I'm not always a huge fan of RPGs. I can be kind of mixed on them. And usually it's because I feel like sometimes they're a little slow and tedious. And I am feeling that a little bit with this, but there are elements I do like. It's a very cool world. It's cool to be exploring space and going on missions and all that, and meeting various alien creatures and people of different personalities and origins and so on, but it feels maybe a little slow-paced to me. Even just going from one place to another can feel a little tedious at times, and the action itself is not that special. It's a pretty standard cover shooter with kind of average aiming and all that. But the world building is cool. The story seems promising, but I'm really not far enough into it to make a complete judgment yet. These are really just my first impressions. I do want to play more of it, but as of yet it has not grabbed me. It does remind me of Knights of the Old Republic, which I do believe was also made by BioWare, and when I tried that many years ago, I couldn't get into it either, so I wonder if this will really be for me at the end of the day. We'll see in time, but I do plan on playing more, and I'll give it another shot for sure. Next up, I played the best PlayStation 5 game ever made, with the highest production value, the most expensive budget, the best graphics, and the most content. And that is Crazy Chicken Shooter Edition. This is not only one game, but two games. It is remakes, no, it's not a remake. Only one of them is a remake, but it contains two games. Crazy Chicken Wanted and Crazy Chicken Remake. And I'm going to drop the facade about this game now and actually be serious about it. This is a game that caught my eye. I was not familiar with the Crazy Chicken franchise, but as someone who can be admittedly a bit judgmental and nitpicky about graphic design, the box art of this game amused me. While most other PS5 games look like they had high budget and production value, and there was a lot of thought put into the packaging, this one just kind of looks like dated CGI chicken clip art and very basic font that's not even centered properly, and I was wondering, what is this and why is it a physical PS5 game? So I did a little research, and what this actually is a part of the German Moorhuhn series. And Moorhuhn is a long-running series for 20 plus years that has had much popularity in Germany. It started as a very basic PC game and has had various installations, or that's not the right word, various titles released in the series, and they all boil down to just kind of clucking on chickens like it's Duck Hunt on the NES and shooting them out of the sky with some slight twists on it. But yeah, this is just one game that's literally one level, and another game that's literally 3 levels, and all you do is try and get a high score, and that's it. And it amused me because it is such a juxtaposition to the other high-budget PS5 games. You buy this $500 hard-to-get console, and you expect to play big AAA games, not this game. And so the irony of this being in a physical PS5 box was amusing enough to me that I bought it when it was on sale. And with a coupon, I paid about $3 for it. But yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm being too judgmental. I am honestly being a bit of a snob about the production value of this. If you take this game at face value, it's fine. It is fun. I was addicted to it for about an hour or two. It's fun in that simple, like, just shoot things kind of game. If that's what you want, and you want something simple and nothing more, there are certainly worse games you can play, and I can see why it has had mainstream popularity for a long time in Germany. And worth noting is this is actually, I believe, technically just a port of two games from the early to mid 2000s. They have not really been updated for this PS5 release, so that's kind of funny to me. But yeah, hopefully I don't seem too mean-spirited about this. The people who made this, they did a fine job. It's just very different from what you'd expect for a PS5 game that actually makes it into a physical production run. Normally something like this would only be released digitally, so I kind of had to have it. Next I played Ori and the Blind Forest. And some of you, if you've been around a long time, there's a small chance you'll remember that I actually streamed part of this game many years ago, I think probably 2016, on Twitch. And I got maybe 3 or 4 hours into it. I was enjoying it quite a bit, and then for whatever reason I just stopped playing it. And I decided to get the Switch version, which comes with the sequel as well, which I've not played yet, and try giving it another shot. And I finished it this time, and it is a great game. It's got some beautiful art, and it's just kind of a fairly simple, compact Metroidvania type of game with some beautiful, painterly type of art to it. And a good level of challenge, if that's what you want. It does get pretty difficult at times. But it's not overly punishing, and it is generous with checkpoints, and doesn't really demote you much for failing, so you can just keep trying and trying again, and it is a good time. If you like the aesthetic of a kind of glowing, colorful, hand-painted nature world, that's what you get in the spades in this game. And you get lots of fast-paced, fun action platforming, and just all the general Metroidvania stuff, power-ups and backtracking and all that. If that's what you like, you will probably like Ori and the Blind Forest. So I do look forward to trying the sequel, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, sometime in the near future. Great game. And next I played Sackboy, A Big Adventure, which, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of a semi-reboot. I don't know if reboot's the right word, maybe just a sequel of sorts to the Little Big Planet series that was very popular on the PS3 and PS4. You play as Sackboy, like in those games, but instead of being a 2D side-scrolling platformer where you can make your own levels and play ones that other people have made, it's a very straightforward 3D platformer, not too much unlike Super Mario 3D World. And it is very fun. It's a very good game. It looks pretty unassuming and like nothing special, and while it's nothing mind-blowing, it is well made. It is a good time. It's got a lot of fun, creative energy to it. It's got some cute characters and fun scenarios and lots of levels that actually use licensed music, popular songs and stuff like that, in clever ways, where the level will kind of move to the beat of the song and you kind of play through the sections of the song. Those are very cool. But yeah, it's really a lot like Super Mario 3D World, but with some changes. So if you like that game, you will probably like this. It's not quite as polished as also fun that you can find various costume pieces and make your own costumes for Sackboy, which is not something you can do in Super Mario 3D World. My only real complaint about this game is that occasionally it can be difficult to tell the depth of your character, so you can't really tell how far away they are from a platform in some cases, and you'll fall off. I feel like the depth perception could have been made more clear at times, but it's usually not a big issue. But yeah, other than that, if it sounds like your kind of game, I would recommend it. And last on the list, we have Shin Megami Tensei 5. And this is, as you can imagine, the 5th mainline game in the Shin Megami Tensei series, which, if you're not already familiar with it, is actually the basis for the Persona series. I believe the Persona series is a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series. And this is my first Shin Megami Tensei game. I have played a little bit of Persona 4, which I didn't get into many years ago, as well as about 20 hours of Persona 5, which I was enjoying, but not enough to actually finish its 100-hour campaign. But this came out recently, and I saw it on sale, and I considered it because I heard that it is somewhat like Persona, as you can imagine, but a bit more streamlined and focused more on just the combat and dungeon crawling and all that. And it kind of strips away a lot of the extra stuff like the social simulation and all that, which is fine, but in Persona I felt kind of overwhelmed with too many things to do and keep track of. So I wanted something kind of like that, but simpler. And that's kind of what this is. It has a lot of similarities to Persona's battle system, but without a lot of the other stuff like I mentioned. And of note, it is supposed to be much harder than the Persona series. And while I've not quite had too much of a challenge with it yet, I'm only a few hours in, I can see where it can come into play, the difficulty, because it's a game where in the battle system you can basically make one wrong move and have it kind of snowball against you. And if that happens, I can imagine you very quickly die. I've not really dealt with that yet, but it's a game where you can make dramatic moves against the enemy or have dramatic moves made against you, all depending on very simple decisions. And so it's fun to try and figure out the optimal approach to each situation before you actually do it, instead of just mindlessly hitting the attack button and hoping your numbers are higher than theirs. I'm not sure I'm going to be enough into this to finish it, because as you may know if you're familiar with my other video game videos, I'm usually not a huge fan of JRPGs, but I've been wanting to give them more of a shot lately, and I am enjoying this, even if I'm not totally sure about it just yet. Would I recommend it? I can't say for sure yet, because I'm only a few hours in, but I am liking it, so hopefully I will continue to like it. But anyway, that has been another video game ramble video, and I do hope you enjoyed this one, and I'd like to thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.